Okay, it says it's preparing. Says it is being live streamed. I believe it when I see it. So let me just look here on my alternate device. Okay. All right. Looks like we're golden. All right. So, welcome everyone to another of our sessions on following our passions. This is the Lynn Academy's series of conversations with experts in the various fields that the Lynn Academy represents. And for those who are new to the Lynn Academy is a compilation of amazing people around the world who've all been either trained by Denise Lynn or the folks that she is certified to teach in various modalities, whether that's Feng Shui, space clearing, clutter clearing, soul coaching, dreaming, and kind of interpreting and understanding what dreams are and do for us and others. And over the course of many years, we have all had the privilege of being able to kind of work with one another and also to connect as an amazing community that really grows and learns and views the world from a place of the soul, if you will. So a place of kind of looking at what serves us and how best to live our best lives. One of the things that Denise Lynn often says is the soul loves the truth. And so I think that through all of her programs and all of the courses, that's true for all of us, and it's something we all kind of align with. But tonight we are going to be talking with Dorena Kohrs. I'm so happy, so privileged to have her on the program tonight in this session. She is going to be talking to us about Feng Shui and metaphors and the power of that within our homes, and she'll have some great stories to share about that. But Dorena is certified in several of the modalities of the Lynn Academy, including interior alignment, which includes instinctive Feng Shui and 7-star blessing, space clearing, as well as clutter clearing, as well as soul coaching. And she's able to combine those amazing kind of gifts that she has through those programs and with her clients. And so tonight she's going to share with us how she does that. And hopefully you will be inspired to then follow your passion or reach out to Dorena to understand kind of how she can help you to kind of tap into those passions. So welcome, Dorena. I'm so happy to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. So if you could start with just a little bit of background about you so people get an understanding of where you came from and how you got involved in this great work.
Yeah, it's one of those things I feel like I've been doing my entire life. If you look at my astrological chart, it basically says space doula. Like I have more Cancerian energy in me, and that caretaking and the nurturing in the home is just really prevalent. But as a child, I grew up in a somewhat dysfunctional, like many of us, home, and to keep myself safe and to feel connected and belonging, I played in my room. Like I rearranged my furniture when I was 8 and 9 years old until it would feel right. So back then I was feng shuiing and not even understanding what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to feel better. So I moved my space around. And fast forward, after I graduated college, I wanted to be an interior designer. And I decided I was not creative enough. I couldn't draw. So I talked myself out of it and I went into marketing. And I had a stint with that. And then there came a time in my probably 30s, like mid 30s or so, where I had the opportunity to leave the job I was in. And I was like, what do I really want to do? And I was like, well, I've always wanted to be a designer. And I walked literally into an opportunity of a small decorating company. And one of the partners was moving. And so I was just calling them to say, hey, can I pick your brain? And they're like, yeah, let's talk. And so I ended up being more of the business and the muscles and and then my partner was the creative one. She was a watercolor artist. She did all the colors and I moved the furniture and painted, we were doing faux painting at the time. She moved away eventually and she said, continue the business. And I was like, well, I can't do that without you.
Mm.
So I actually moved it into professional organizing because it was that thing I could do with my eyes closed. I've just always had that intuitive knowing where things belonged.
Mhm.
And then I got super frustrated with the organizing business because I was like, people are telling me like, here are my 50 pairs of shoes, organize them. And I was like, no, you don't need like all 50 pairs of your shoes,
Mhm.
unless you love them, need them, and use them. Like, why are you
Right.
keeping them? And so that's when I jumped into the clutter clearing and did Denise's certified clutter clearing coaching.
Mm.
And then I was talking people out of their stuff. And I was like, there's something more. Like, I just kept feeling like there was something more. And at which point I had actually dabbled in Feng Shui like a decade ago at that time.
Mhm.
And I connected with Luann.
Ah.
And I did my Feng Shui training with her. And I'll never remember sitting at Inner Harmony where she
Mhm.
teaches and introducing the Bagua. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this is it.
Mhm.
Like, when you apply the Feng Shui Bagua map, which for those of you who don't know, it's like every area of your home is associated with an area of your life. And when you overlay that template on your floor plan, it gives you so much information. And I was like,
Mhm.
now I could see, it was like as if I could see into people's subconscious.
Mm.
Because because clutter isn't always the overflowing junk drawer, right? Clutter can
Sure.
be super subtle. And
Mhm.
so when you can see where somebody is feeling stuck in their life,
Mhm.
or where they want to expand in their life, and then you look at that area of their home associated, like whether it's a partnership or money, and then you look at that space, you can start seeing how it's mirroring. You can
Mm.
see the metaphors in their space. So it was like
Mhm.
this gift of like, oh, now I understand why this person's having the same struggles with money, or now I
Mhm.
understand why this person is yearning for a relationship and they keep or not attracting something. Like, I could see it in their space. So then I
Sure.
was like, well, now we can shift your space
Mm.
and create that template for how they want to feel in relationship, or how they want their to feel abundant. And so that's the magic of how I got into this.
That is magic. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about the origin of Space Doula. So this is for those, just to give people a little background. So that is the company that you have, and you use that as a way to bring more love right into people's homes and their lives by kind of looking at their energy. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of the origin of that?
Yeah, interestingly, it was gifted to me by my son's then karate
Oh,
instructor, karate
wow.
coach.
Hmm.
I was, just like those synchronistic things that happen. Like, I could have tried to think of a name, for my business, my company forever, and
Hmm.
not have come up with that. And yet, so I walked in one day, I think I had dropped something off. It wasn't even during a normal class or anything. And this gentleman was working on his website. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm working on mine too. And he's like, well, what do you do? And I explained to him what I do is that, I help people shift the energy in their home so they can create the life that they want. And he's like, oh, so you're a space doula. And I was like,
Uh,
yes, like that's what I am.
that's perfect. I
So,
love that.
a doula is somebody who supports somebody in giving birth. And so it's really giving birth to your dreams through using your home, using your
Hmm.
space. So,
I love that story. I love that. So, in the practice and in life, actually, you talk about how metaphor is so important and how it's been important for you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about when you say feng shui metaphors, what does that mean? How can people kind of understand that from your perspective?
right, your home is constantly giving you information, and it's a
Mm.
mirror. So what's happening in your life is mirrored in your space. And so you can start seeing those metaphors of your life play out in your space.
Mm.
And there's certain things in feng shui, like plumbing is related to or associated with your emotions,
Mhm.
electricity with your life force. So there are certain things in feng shui that are associated. So if you have plumbing problems, you can start looking at like, oh, is there something clogged? Like, I had a client once where she had a constant plumbing problem in her bathroom, and her bathroom happened to be in her relationship area. So I was like, oh,
Mhm.
something's something's not flowing in her relationship. And I didn't really know which relationship, because the relationship area of your home it's your intimate relationships, but it's those one-on-one, right? And so I didn't know if this was with her partner or somebody else. And I'm like, well, let's clear the drain, right? So cleared the clog, and it turned out it was with her business partner. And a lot of times, I don't know, when we shift something in somebody's home, I don't know which way it's going to go, right? So like in a partnership, it could be like, oh, we're going to enhance the partnership, but sometimes that partnership wasn't right? Or there was an ending to it. So sometimes that feng shui shift can open the door for the exit. And that's what happened with her partnership. She actually had some problems speaking up and saying what she wanted in her business partnership. Cleared the drain.
Wow.
It all, flowed much more smoothly after that.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So are there things that people should in their homes kind of look for, as you're thinking about the metaphors in their homes? Are there, what would you recommend? Where should they start? What should they kind of?
I think even the front door, right? Our front door is the mouth of chi. It's how we present ourselves to the world. So it's, it's looking at your front door. And so my story is, because I actually just recently redid my whole front entrance. And it's like the cobbler in his shoes. And sometimes we don't see. That's why it's always nice to have somebody else come into your space, because we're so familiar with our spaces that we often don't see the obvious. And which is why a lot of times I'll suggest to people take a picture of their space and then actually look at the photograph, because a lot of times it's a different perspective. And so I decided to look at my front door, and I was like, oh, I had a light on either side of the door, and they were motion sensor. And so one went on when it was supposed to, the other didn't. So I'd have to sit there and like rub it for it to go on. And I was like, well, I need to change that. So again, just not having as much energy coming in, having to coax that energy in. So you want things that attract, just like a flower attracts a bee. So you want energy to be attracted to your door. So whether it's, a pretty wreath on your front door, or a pop of color, a pot of flowers. And a lot of times people, especially in the transition of seasons, you'll see like dead flower pots or empty flower pots. And I'll be like, I'd rather see no flower pot than like an empty or dead flowers in there. So really, I think looking at your front door and say, is it inviting? Is it inviting? Because that's where opportunities come into your home and abundance comes in. So looking at your front door and saying, hey, is this welcoming energy, and using it? Like, that's the other thing. Like, how many of us actually don't use our front doors? And even if that doesn't mean you have to come in and out of it every day, but because a lot of times it is more convenient to come in through a garage door, but to open it, right? To like, I like to say, if you don't use your front door on a regular basis as a matter of ritual, as you wake up and, going out, greeting the day and say hello. And sometimes I'll just leave my door open for a little bit extra time, be like, all right, come on. Like, what wants to come in today?
Right. That's great. So when you're working with clients, how do you walk them through the process then of really kind of understanding the impact of their home on them?
Well, I start, we always start with what's going on in their life. So I do a house whispering, and that's a initial session with somebody where like we sit and talk for a while, like before they're like, do you want to see my house? I'm like, no, not yet. Like, I want to understand you. I want to understand your life. I want to understand what's going on, what's working, what's not working. Because our homes can become a complete template for the life we want to live, and
Absolutely.
I always want people to feel like they walk in and there's this safe, like you can take a breath, like there's so much going on outside, but when you come home, to feel safe, to feel nurtured, to feel loved when you walk in your space. So I'll get a good understanding of what's going on, what they might want to shift, what patterns are repeating that they're like, why does this always happen? And then once we do that, then I'll look at their space and I will look for those patterns in their space. I will look for those metaphors, like how is where they're stuck showing up in their space. And primarily one of the tools, like I mentioned in the beginning, is the Bagua map. You know,
Mhm.
so when you lay that template over, I will look in certain areas. But it's not always where you think it is,
Mm.
right? So a lot of times people are like, money, right? Like that could be a hot button. Like, I just need more money in my bank account. And I
Mhm.
had a client one day. This was an in-person. So sometimes they work virtually and sometimes in person. This happened to be in
Sure.
person. And she said she had recently gotten married and her partner moved into her home. And
Mhm.
she said, you know, their stuff was all in what happened to be the wealth area. And so she said, I really need more money in my business. I need things to flow. So we go into this back room. It's the back left corner. So for those
Mhm.
of you, we in the Interior School of Alignment, we use the front door to orient the Bagua map. So if you're standing at your front door, that back left corner is the wealth area. So we go and look at the space. But again, this is where her partner had put all of their stuff.
Mhm.
And you can't throw out other people's stuff, right? You know,
Right.
so I was like, all right, there's not a lot we can do here.
Mhm.
And so I started listening to her and her relationship. And I just heard a little bit of friction in communication with each other.
Sure.
And so I was like, all right, well, let's go look at the relationship area of your home
Mhm.
now,
Mm.
which is the back right corner. So then we go into the relationship area and they had two stars on the wall, like, you know, those metal stars that a lot
Yeah.
like decorative. So
Mhm.
one was smaller and one was really big.
Ah.
And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, there's a little imbalance in the relationship, because in the relationship area, we like to see things in pairs. We like to see them balanced.
Mhm.
So that gave me some information about their relationship. And so then I can say, hey, let's look at putting these someplace else, not in your relationship area. Let's see what we can put that gives both of you equal footing.
Mhm.
But then I was like, well, now let's go over to the inner knowledge area. So that's like diagonal, the other end of the house,
Mhm.
because the inner knowledge area is all about your own self-awareness, your personal
Mhm.
development. So then we go look in there, and a lot of times I'll just get intuitive hits on things. And
Mhm.
so I see, it's like, I always say it's like Sesame Street. And the Sesame Street is like, remember the song, like one of these things doesn't belong together.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, so that's what goes on in my head. So when you
Mhm.
ask how I work with somebody, I sing Sesame Street in my head.
That's great.
So I'm like looking in the space, I'm like, what doesn't feel right? What doesn't seem like it belongs? And
Mhm.
I see this painting on the wall, and I was like, oh, tell me about this.
Mhm.
And she said, and it was on her side of the bed. And she said, oh, that's from my ex. My
Oh,
ex painted it.
interesting.
Right. And so I
Mm.
was like, okay, that's a data point. And so
Mhm.
I said, well, tell me what you had in that relationship that you don't have in your current relationship.
Mm.
Like, it felt like she was bringing something from this past
Yeah.
relationship to make up for something that she currently didn't have. And then she was
Mhm.
able to share that. And
Mhm.
that's how you can, that's, you know, where we go into the subconscious, like, oh, I didn't realize I was still longing for this bit that I had.
Right.
And then from a space perspective, she did a process around that painting. She was able to
Mhm.
let go of it. She was able to do some grief work. And then I got a call, I don't know how much longer, not that much longer after that. She's like, her current partner, she's like, you're not going to believe this. She cleared out the whole room.
Oh, wow.
And all, you know, then like the big shift happens, right?
Mhm.
So when
Yeah.
she was able to release this other person from her life,
Mhm.
then it left room, and then
Yeah.
everything started balancing out.
Yeah. See, that's one of the things I just love about Feng Shui, is because it's so powerful, but and while there's inner work that can be done and often needs to be done, the things that you can do, you're so empowered to make change in your home once you understand kind of, what does this really mean? What is that metaphor for? So that it's just one of the things that I really appreciate about Feng Shui, and specifically instinctive Feng Shui, and what we've learned is that, the ahas are so powerful, and sometimes it seems like it's a simple thing, but you scratch the surface, and there's so much more there.
Yeah, it's so like, because it doesn't take the place of therapy or
Mm-mm.
grief work or any of those things, but sometimes
Correct.
we
Yeah.
don't we don't know that it's there. And so it gives us an opening and then helps us support us in our journey. And so before we got on, I told you I had a pretty massive thing happen in my own life.
Yeah.
And it's glass started breaking, and not just like a glass from the cabinet, but it started out with, I had bought this beautiful vase for my dining room table. Like I splurged on it, and it was gorgeous and I loved it. And like freak accident, it shattered.
Wow.
And I was like, so I bought another one to replace it. That one broke.
Wow.
I bought another one to replace it. That one broke. We're like upwards of $1,000 by this time. And I'm like, all right, I got to figure this out, because like
that's costing a lot of money.
This is getting expensive. So I was like, all right, do your work, right? Like and I'm like, all right, glass is emotions. Glass is shattering. Like what is, and so I sat with it. I didn't have an immediate answer. I just knew there was something around emotions and shattering. And then I was like, well, these were vases that like I picked out, that I loved. And I was like, oh, I'm the vase. And as I stayed in the inquiry, I realized how much I was holding. I've held on to my emotions my entire life. And as I started like thinking about it more and more, I realized how I wasn't allowed to express my emotions because that wasn't safe in the environment I grew up in. And all that Cancerian energy is like, I want to cry all the time, And so it wasn't safe. And so I've learned to control my emotions. And my house is like, hey, we're all done with that. Right.
Yeah. Time for a change.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so what I did is I hired a friend of mine who's a grief coach, and we went on a deep dive into the relationship with my mom, and some healing work I needed to do with that.
Sure.
From there, I had a swing set in my backyard, and my youngest is 15. My oldest is 29. And I was like, there's nobody playing on the swing set anymore. But I had gotten the swing set 25-ish years ago, when I had been divorced, and all I wanted was a house of my own. And I had lived in an apartment most of my life, and I just wanted my own house. So I saved and I saved and I saved, and vision boards and all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so manifested this house, this adorable house. And before we even moved in, we had a swing set in the backyard, because the kids, at that time I had two kids, and we were on the second floor of an apartment. I was constantly telling them to be quiet. And I wanted this swing set. So for me, the swing set represented them able to express themselves and be loud, which I was never allowed to be loud. But something told me I needed to let go of the swing set. And I didn't quite understand it, but it was very powerful that I needed to let go. So I'm part of a group on Monday nights, part of Luann's community, that she has calls on Monday nights. And I was telling the story about how I let go of the swing set. And as I told the story, a goose flew in front of somebody who was driving at the time and listening. And she's like, Dorena, I don't know what just happened. You said you got rid of the swing set, and this goose flew in front of me. It was for you. This was a sign for you. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I go into Ted Andrews, right? Animal Speak book, and look up goose. And what my eye lands on is breaking of childhood patterns.
Wow.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. The very next day, I'm driving down the road, and in front of me, I see what I think is a turkey vulture. And I'm like, of course it's a turkey vulture, because, they pick apart things that are dead. And I'm like, here's all the stuff I'm processing. It needs to be picked away. So of course it's a turkey vulture, and picking at something, but I didn't know what it was picking. And as I get closer, and within, I don't know, whatever, 25 feet or so, I get closer, and all of a sudden, was it 4 geese flew in front of my car and took off.
Oh boy.
Like at my car. And what I realized is that what was in the road wasn't a dead animal. It was a goose that these other geese were trying to help fly, that
Oh,
a car had hit it, it had broken its neck.
oh my,
And so there was blood, and they had been trying to help it.
right.
And so I was on my way to meet some friends at a coffee shop. I went to the coffee shop and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm this dead goose,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
but anyhow, so as I processed that, and Luann said something beautiful. She was like, that goose gifted you
mm,
her life,
mhm.
as this break in this pattern. So anyhow, I'm sorry, that's a little bit of a long story, but
No, that's beautiful.
all came from my house. I wouldn't have realized that I was holding on to my emotions. So I couldn't have even gone to therapy and said, help me release my emotions, because I didn't have those words. I didn't
Right.
know that's what I was doing until my
Hmm.
house, my house
Yeah.
told me.
Yes. Wow. That's so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing. That's just an amazing, amazing tale. Oh,
It was a
um,
lot.
yeah,
It was a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, absolutely. Hmm. Well, we are almost out of time, so I'm just going to do a quick checkup. I'm trying to check on my phone here, just see if we have any questions along the way here, because I want to make sure we're um, checking in on that. I haven't seen any questions just yet, so which is just fine. For those who are watching this later, feel free to drop questions in the comments. I'm happy to address those as we are able. So we'll keep an eye on those. But I really want to say thank you so much, Dorena, for your energy and your stories. It's very powerful. So thank you for that. And
Oh,
for
thank you.
others who have been inspired by you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they have questions, if they want to attend, if you have any courses or anything else coming up in the future?
Yeah, the really fun thing that I created last summer, I think I spent the summer creating a quiz, and it
Hmm.
was a blast.
Yeah.
And so you can find it at spacedoula.com/quiz.
Okay.
And if you go there, you can take this quiz and it will actually tell you what area of your home to focus on.
Mm.
So there's 50 odd questions. It takes about 10 minutes. But
Hmm.
at the end of it, you get this really pretty PDF and a website, a web
Oh.
page that tells you, hey, this is the area of your life that's craving attention. So
Hmm.
they're all questions about your life. And at the end of it, it pulls all that data, this magic behind the scenes things happens. And
Yes.
then it
Yes.
tells you, hey, this is the area of your life that's craving attention. And this is the area of your home to focus on,
Hmm.
so that you're not looking everywhere, that you
Right.
can pinpoint your efforts to a specific space. So
That's fantastic. That's a great tool for people.
yeah, so that's super fun. And then you can always email me at Dorena@spacedoula.com, or my website, spacedoula.com. I actually have a kind of last minute notice, but I do have a virtual retreat this weekend. That's Friday to Sunday.
Nice.
Um, and that's going to be going through the process. We're going to start with a quiz,
Hmm.
and then people will pick one area to focus on, to shift the energy. And then we'll go through the 5 steps of shifting the energy in your house.
Hmm.
Those, there's a process of like, okay, first you need to declutter, and then we need to clean the space because energy likes to stick to dust, and
Yes. Hmm.
and then there's some organizing. So basically it takes all my different pieces and puts them
Yeah.
into this process. And then we'll do feng shui enhancements and then some space clearing. But people will be able to do that in the support with me,
Hmm.
like having access throughout the weekend, so that when you're like, what do I do with my old journals? You can say,
Mm-hmm.
there's a office hour time where you can ask those questions. So you can
Oh, that's
actually
great.
make progress, throughout the weekend, and not get stuck in some of those
Hmm.
sticking points like journals and old yearbooks or
Sure.
that type of thing.
Well, thank you once again for everything. It's been an honor to have you in the program, and I'm sure people have been inspired by you and what you have to share, and just the energy that you bring. So thank you so much for that. And for those again who want to learn more, please go to spacedoula.com. Check out that quiz, reach out to Dorena directly in email, and I'm sure you will find new ways to understand your space and understand the metaphors in your home. So thank you everyone once again, and thank you too, Dorena.
Thank you.